Great. So the topic we're going to be talking about is, are solo stakers valuable for censorship resistance? My name is Nixo. I currently lead a staking community called ETHGlobal, which is first and foremost a community that is committed to the health and decentralization of the network. And that means that we support the validator set any way we can. We create solo node operators when we can, and we also support existing node operators. We do that by creating and supporting resources, tooling, and facilitating community events for stakers. The takeaway from this talk is that solo stakers are mostly a fallback. I'm glad that Shriram already mentioned it in his talk. It's a small percentage of the validator set, but it is a critical line of defense. And they sort of set a standard of behavior. They act as auditors. And if there's some sort of amount of censorship going on that's degrading the value or the quality of the network, they don't need to go through some sort of governance process because this is a permissionless network. So they just need to participate in a censorless way. So why is a large entity more likely to censor? So a large entity has customers that it has obligations to, and it has a duty to maximize staking rewards, which means that it's going to be connecting to MEV boost or MEV boost. And at that point, censorship is really in the hands of builders and relays. And builders and relays are known entities with a limited landscape, so they're relatively easy to target for any entity that has an interest in censoring certain transactions. So how is a solo staker different? They're generally not subject to the same pressures as each other and as large entities. They're abundant, so this is almost like a meaninglessly large number, but the last number that I saw was that solo stakers actually represent 35 to 75% of nodes on the network, whereas they're only 6.5-ish%. Those are both numbers from Rated Network. So they're actually a large amount of people, whereas when you go to a large staking operation, it's usually like 2, 3, 4 people who understand the system and making decisions for that system. They can be geographically located anywhere. They're under different ISPs. They're running different hardware and software because they don't have to have commercial setups, which often look very similar to each other. They're not a commercial business, so you can't target them with like the same pressures that you would use to target any sort of business. In general, it's a lot of work and very little reward to target solo stakers. And quick note, the way that solo stakers censor or not censor is solo stakers can build local blocks. Any staker, any validator can build local blocks. And when they're building local blocks, they're not censoring because they get it blind. And then if they choose to use MEV boost to maximize their rewards, it's just in the hands of the builders and the builders of the relays, whether they're censoring. But there's also a flag that they can enable on MEV boost, which is the min bid flag, which allows them to set a target for if the block coming in is higher than that with MEV boost, they'll take that. But if it's lower than that, they'll just build locally. So who are solo stakers? We're going to give like a little profile of solo stakers to sort of give you an idea of why they're so important and how people can support them. So these are 2 screenshots from eStaker's YouTube channel. And the first screenshot is our live streams. And you can see that the first 3 of 4 of those are just network upgrades, and they're highly attended. And it's just people interested in watching network upgrades happen. And the second one is our pre-recorded uploaded videos. And the first one is how to shop for Ethereum hardware. So that's people who are interested in becoming validators. And the next 3 are sort of targeting people who are already running nodes. And so you can, like from both of these things, that you can see that validators, solo stakers are generally a highly engaged subset of people. And they range from less technical to more technical. Less technical folks are the ones who are following the guides, and the more technical folks are the ones who are writing the guides. The more technical folks who are writing the guides are generally really proud of what they're doing, and this is their hobby, and they're happy to be engaged, so they come back to the staking community and sort of help people troubleshoot, help people get on board. And I'm all the way on that less technical side, and I like to think that I'm uniquely positioned there to sort of bring people onto this scale, because if I can run a validator, anyone can. So they understand how to update, upgrade, and troubleshoot their nodes, and they're highly engaged in the network. Solo stakers often fundamentally care about the network, and I'm going to prove that to you over a few slides. So liquid staking token holders and staking as a service provider customers require less understanding about the network as a whole because they generally just have to go to a UI and deposit their money there, and so they don't necessarily have to have a fundamental understanding of staking to be able to participate in the consensus layer. And so their interests generally lie in maximizing rewards, and when you have a bunch of customers who are just interested in maximizing rewards, that can often aggregately influence the operators who are running their stake. So this is, I think a lot of you already know about client diversity, but generally we want lots of clients on the Ethereum network because if one of them goes down, we don't want that affecting the network as a whole or affecting the value of the network. So in 2021, there was a social layer campaign to increase client diversity and run minority clients. And that was generally a bottom-up campaign. And I would say that it was very successful. The majority of, or the supermajority of validators went from running Prism to having a pretty balanced consensus layer landscape. So this is data from the execution layer clients, and data from the execution layer clients is generally harder to get at, and the reasons for that are outside of the scope of this talk. But this data is from ethernodes.org. The Beacon Chain guys, people associated with Beacon Chain put this together. And the way that this data is collected is it connects to a node with an empty peer slot, and then it sort of gathers data about what execution layer client it's running, and then it disconnects. And in that time, it doesn't actually get any information about how many validators that node is running. So this is more of an overview of the node execution layer client landscape. And so, but what we care about is the validator client landscape. So the same guys, the Beacon Chain guys, did another data set where they basically reached out to a bunch of pools and asked them what clients they're running. And this is survey data. I think it covered like, I want to say 40 to 50% of the network. And then Hani Abu from clientdiversity.org extrapolated this to the rest of the network and came up with this data, which looks a lot different than the data on the left, and it's a lot more concerning over here. So given the fact that solo stakers, home stakers map to a very large percentage of the network in terms of nodes, but a very small percentage of the network in terms of validators, I would say that the left one overrepresents solo stakers and the right one overrepresents large staking pools and large staking operations. So this is just evidence for the fact that solo stakers are generally a lot more responsible in making sure that they're supporting the health and decentralization of the network. So when you spin up a validator on Rocket Pool, what it does is it sort of randomly chooses your clients, and it automatically sets it in the graffiti what clients you're using. So it's a lot easier to measure. And they also do pushes in their community to run minority clients. And so just from this, you can see the Rocket Pool validators who, I think like 70% of them are running from home, 30% are on all nodes. They're mostly running Lighthouse, Teku, and Nimbus, whereas the overall validator set is running Prism and Lighthouse. And so that shows that people who are running from home are more engaged, know what they're doing. They take action on network health. And this is just the top 4 Reddit posts from eStaker in the past year. 2 of them are about liquid staking provider centralization concerns. One of them is about execution layer client campaign, and then the third one, or the fourth one, is a technical guide. And so this is what the solo staking community is upvoting and engaging with. They're sort of values-based. So solo stakers are concentrated in developed nations, which is not ideal. More than 50% of them can be found in the US, Germany, and the UK. And I hope that I'm not exaggerating when I say that I think that eStakers had an outsized influence on who is staking and the resources that they're using to stake. And so eStaker has a knowledge base, and up until this year, it's only been available in English. But there has been a push this year to make it available in more languages. And so it's now available in Spanish, Dutch, French, Malay, Portuguese, and Turkish. And some of those are in progress and need more help. So we're attempting to help validator geographic diversity. One of the last points I'll make is that solo stakers are really risk averse and they're careful. Diva Liquid Staking Protocol recently did a token launch, and they did an airdrop where they favored solo stakers. And a lot of them didn't claim it because they said, I would rather turn down free money than claim something with an address that I'm using to stake. And I didn't have to go very far. Both of these posts, one from Discord, one from the subreddit, are from people who are wondering, should they censor certain transactions? They're located in places where they're worried about running a validator if they should be censoring or not. And so they need a little bit more clarity and need to know that they're not on the hook for these kinds of things, because they do want to comply any way they can. They're just nerds running computers that generate rewards. They're not like rule breakers or crazy people. So just an overview, solo stakers understand the fundamental nature of staking. They're engaged, they pay attention to what's going on the network. They place a high value on network health and decentralization. They're careful, they need some clarity, and they're motivated mostly by stable income and security in their investment. Overall, the takeaway is going to be a bit muddled. I don't think solo stakers necessarily have an impact on day-to-day operations because on censorship resistant, because a lot of them are connected to MEV Boost at this point. I think 95% of the network is connected to MEV Boost, and I would guess that that 5% is disproportionately made up of solo stakers, because large business operations do have an obligation to their customers to maximize rewards. And so solo stakers sort of act as a critical social layer fallback. And they're standard bearers, and they can act as auditors of the network. And so when it's business as usual, censorship resistance is basically in the hands of builders and relays. But in critical situations, they sort of act as the Night's Watch from Game of Thrones. If everything is going on, you're not paying attention to the fact that they exist, they're just doing what they do. But when the White Walkers come south, they are a critical line of defense. So how do we ensure that solo stakers continue to participate? More resources, more education, more support, and all of the above in more languages. We solidify validators as neutral parties without a burden or ability to censor. We lower the cost of altruism in local block building. So that can be things like MEV burn or the min bid flag tweets. My friend Ladislaus from the eStaker community recently mentioned to me that he wished that the min bid flag, that the value you set there would be relative to market conditions rather than absolute, things like that. So what can solo stakers do? Build your local blocks or turn on your min bid flag. And that is it.